Here are some hidden details and Easter eggs that you might have missed while watching Act 2 of Season 2 of Arcane. Piltover's enforcers now have the Kierman sigil on their chests. They also hoist this flag up in the middle of the Undercity. This guy looks a lot like the guy who got thrown through the window by Marcus's men in the first season. Ambessa's Noxian forces have also taken up the Kierman sigil, showing their allegiance to Caitlyn. This scene on the bridge with Rictus is also a callback to Marcus stationing his enforcers on the bridge as well. This is somewhat inverting Caitlyn's role, since the last time this happened she was on the receiving end of this treatment. Now she's the one delivering it. This looks like one of Jinx's followers have painted over her wanted posters, and the mask does look like one of the Firelight masks. So maybe it was a Firelight person who's now a Jinxer. When Jinx acts like an announcer, the lights on the floor make that smiling icon that we saw on Savika's arm when she hit the jackpot. These bugs that Jinx introduces are references to creatures that we see in League of Legends jungle. Scuttlebutt is a reference to the scuttle crab on Summoner's Rift in League of Legends. Isha is wearing bunny ears in this scene, which is probably a shout out to this bunny that Powder would lug around with her everywhere she'd go. We first see it when Vi says it was a toy, but some man threw it up there onto the wires. This is to show that Isha is filling the void created by Soko, Vanda and Vi's absence in Jinx's life. This horse in Jinx's box looks identical to the one that she stole from Jace's warehouse in the first episode, which begs the question, how is it here, seeing as Jinx did throw all of that stuff they stole into the bay. In this frame we can see that Jinx's rocket launcher Fishbones has been decommissioned for now. This Vistian was at the memorial, but I guess they were using that memorial to also foreshadow his death. RIP bro, you will be missed. This hextech gemstone weapon that Ambessa is working on has the resolve and domination runes from League on it, which is probably why it doesn't work. This scene reveals that Ambessa suspects that the Black Rose kidnapped Jace and Heimerdinger. This is somewhat important because it leads her to the assumption that the Black Rose fears hextech, which they might not, because they didn't kidnap any of those people. Caitlyn being able to see her reflection here with Jinx behind the glass is not only peak by the art team, but is also a metaphor that she has become what she sought to destroy. She is now the one terrorizing the public while in search for Jinx. The background in the Kierman's manor has a painting of a ballerina. This painting is a subtle reference to Oriana. This pose is very similar to her in-game dancing animation and is the first hint we get that we will be seeing her. Now this moment is just great scene composition. So the light from the curtain acts like a barrier between Caitlyn and Ambessa. It's to show us that there is a rift growing between them, and it has to do with the unnecessary violence that Rictus instigates. Counselor Sallow is jealous of Mel.
Even when she's not here, she's all anyone talks about. I get it. She's the last heir of the great Medardas.
He's a man who seeks praise and admiration for his actions. However, we can tell that he's a short-term thinker. He's got a shimmer addiction, throws lavish parties, and even this moment where he offered Counselor Hoskell nuts that he was allergic to was just a ploy to try and outshine Mel. Ironically, Mel was trolling here. She gave Hoskell a child's toy to take a jab at his intelligence. This item in Jinx's lair behind Isha does look like the Firelight's logo, and I'm just wondering where it's from and what it means.
Don't trip on the way out.
Jinx tells Savika not to trip on the way out, and this could be a sly reference to that time that Jinx gassed her and tripped her up. But yeah, maybe not, because it's a bit touchy. Now this is Soko's chair that Jinx is talking to. I'm not sure how many people actually missed that one, but I'm just being safe. The writers do a good job by putting Caitlyn's morning scene right after Jinx's morning scene to remind us that they are both dealing with grief and their motivations and decisions are being influenced by this. Speaking about grief, the Firelights believe that Echo is dead and have put him on their memorial wall. His part of the mural has a Firelight crown above his head. We can also guess that the clock to his left foreshadows that he will be back via time travel. In fact, a lot of the characters on this wall aren't actually dead, they've just changed. Savika takes a visit to Vanda's statue. She can finally feel the weight of being in charge, and the fact that the statue dwarfs her in size comparison shows that she feels that Vanda's boots are quite big to fill. Hey yo, it's my boy Harold. We learned this enforcer's name from Mel when she stops him from seeing Jace and Victor creating hextech. And we also got my boy Jericho here. Jericho served Vi food before giving her a tip about Silco. And also, isn't this guy on the right the shady guy who signed off on the Shimmer shipment? This would actually make this like the extras assembled, the extras Avengers. Rictus throws Isha like a shot put. Now, while this isn't important right now, it will be a bit later when we mention why this whole thing is funny. But we'll get back to that later. This moment with Singed cutting his hand open is reminiscent to Attack on Titan, where some of the characters can turn into titans by doing the same. It also reminds me of how Voldemort is brought back in the Goblet of Fire when they need Harry's blood to bring him back. They cut open Harry's hand and that's how it happens. And both of these references are summonings using blood from someone's hand, which I feel is as impactful as this scene. Vander does actually see his statue, but he doesn't recognize himself. The metaphor here is that he internally doesn't recognize himself as well, not just physically. Warwick being able to track down Singed and the others via the scent of their blood is actually an ability that he does have in League of Legends. It's called Blood Hunt. Yo, who else found it funny that this enforcer uniform doesn't fit Jinx? It's almost like she'd never want to be one. She also finally gets to put up the middle finger after failing to do so against Savika earlier. The two gods that Savika and Jinx knock out are playing Telstone, which is a strategy game like chess played in Runeterra. I'm pretty sure that Riot Games also tried to launch this as an official game, but I'm not sure how they're going with that. Ambessa also sports the Kierman sigil on her chest like her gods, but Rictus doesn't. This is to show that he's only loyal to Ambessa. A good point to also point out here is that even though all of these Noxians wear the Kierman sigil, they still wear all of their Noxian attire underneath. Singed does see Savika and Jinx, and he obviously knows that Warwick is coming. So this implies that he doesn't seem to care for any allegiance with them, even though he did serve under Silco at a certain point. Jinx finally has that pistol that she uses in game, and it's called Zapper. Now, while not everything has to tie back to League of Legends, the enforcers do look very similar to the minions in League of Legends based on how they move, and also based on the fact that they have a shield in one hand and a rod-like weapon in the other. Warwick actually kills Stillwater's warden in his rampage. That guy is gone. No more beating on Vi. Jinx has insane plot armor. Again, the scene with Echo on the bridge is being referenced, except this time she doesn't manage to get the grenade off. However, this grenade was the first trigger that actually helps Vander remember her. Vi messes up Scowler's jaw. Again, after being the person who destroyed it in the first place at Stillwater Hold. This would also imply that he either escaped when Jinx freed everyone, or he was freed before the invasion. Now is as good a time as ever to mention that fish seems to be the primary food source in the Undercity. It would make sense since both cities, Zorn and Piltover, are quite close to this huge body of water. The disgusting dude who licks everyone is back. Couldn't bother to learn his name, but Vi clocks him in the face, so that's a communal W. Jinx's joke mocking Vi's face tat doesn't land quite well. Jinx actually cries pink tears. This could be a side effect of the shimmer used to save her life. Vi looking into this broken mirror shows how broken her self-image is at this point of her life. This isn't who she's supposed to be. Ambessa got scratched by Warwick. This damaged her mask and cut her face. The best part is her wearing this mask actually saved her face. It's nice to see that the show showed a practical use for her wearing these masks in combat. It's not just aesthetic. Caitlyn again does intuitive detective work, being able to visualize the scene's events by just walking through the crime scene. The first time she did this, Marcus stopped her. Speaking about detectives, Detective Ambessa. What makes Ambessa such a dangerous and captivating character is how sharp she is. She instantly figures out that Singed has motivations behind what he does, and she then snatches his locket, knowing that it will be important later on. She did the same in this scene with Salo. She sniffed out the shimmer and knew he wasn't ready, and she was also quick to call out Caitlyn on her relationship with Maddie. Ambessa understands that people are driven by something, and she makes it her prerogative to find out what that thing is.
So devoid of light and fresh air and all basic human considerations that up till now, I have forbidden their use.
This one's also a smart writing trick. Caitlin threatens Singed of all people with a lack of fresh air. I mean, come on. That's got to be the writers knowing what they're doing there. Until now, LeBlanc's direct involvement in this plot has felt shaky. We weren't sure whether it was her. However, the use of these chains is very akin to LeBlanc's brand of magic. And this is because she does have a spell called Ethereal Chains in the game. My honest opinion on Allura is that she is still a very sketchy character based on the fact that she was the only one we saw in the room with Mel during Mel's disappearance. But we'll get to that whole thing in another video. Mel's brother Kino says the stewards of the old world are always keen to give you a glimpse of their might. This statement might have to do with the fact that there was a regime change in Noxus when Mel was a child. Kino is also wearing a necklace that is oddly familiar to the girl that Mel's mother slaughtered while this whole regime change was taking place in Noxus. Something a lot of people would have missed is that Mel is not wearing her tiara anymore in the scene. But when she was kidnapped, she was. So where did it go? I did theorize that this tiara looked a lot like LeBlanc's crown, but we'll have to wait to find out the details on this. This mural of Jinx shows that she's a symbol now after bombing the pipeline. The people equate her to a figure like Vander, someone who takes care of the Undercity. The birds might also be a reference to Jana. There's a type of glowing moss in this tunnel when they go out on their mission to seek Vander. And again, the writers were a bit saucy with this scene. They make Jinx slapping Vi actually activate the glowing moss, which was pretty smart. I didn't expect that to happen. What I did expect to happen was what happened when Warwick came up the tunnel and you can see the tunnel lighting up and you just know that he's running towards them. That one was more predictable. Ambessa gives Singed his locket back when negotiating with him. This shows her maturity and her communication skills, and that she understands that Singed is driven and he wants something too. I discussed this a bit earlier. Singed mentioned that Vander survived his experiments because of his willingness to live and his high tolerance to pain, and that's why it worked. However, it does make you think, what does this mean for his daughter when he tries these experiments on her? Is he not concerned about that? Vander's memory recalls this monkey because it was the alarm he set to keep his kids safe from the enforcers. We learn from this flashback that Soko was on the bridge as part of the uprising that got Vi's parents killed, meaning that Vander only fell out with Soko after this uprising on the bridge. This jukebox with Vi and Powder's mom in front of it is the same one we see at the start of every Arcane episode. In this scene with Kino and Mel, there are a lot of reflections and Kino breaks a lot of physical laws based on his teleportation-like movement. I wonder what character blinks around and has mirror images. Hey man, all I'm gonna say is that my LeBlanc fans, we're gonna eat good. We have no idea how or why Mel can draw this symbol or rune without seeing it. Kino did explain that false prophets would get locked in the Oculurum. This, plus the fact that we can literally see Mel emitting energy, does mean that she probably has powers. It might not only be an item. The locket that Singed carries around does look a lot like Oriana's ball. Singed also put Deckard's head in a jar, implying that he was possibly trying to keep him alive too, like he did with Vander. We can also see what could be the cat from the first episode next to Deckard, or at least what's left of him. Caitlin calls Singed Dr. Revik, and this pretty much confirms that he is Oriana's canonical father, and I did theorize this in another one of my videos, so it feels good to get this right. We see more confirmation about this later in the secret room as well. I think the reason why they've hid his full name for so long is that all of us who are in the know would have probably spoiled it for everyone else as soon as we heard the name Dr. Revik. So yeah, pretty smart of them to hide his name and rather just go with Singed for the entire series. We also get an Oriana face reveal. Mel can read runic patterns on this wall. This might be the entire point of this room, to get her to use her powers, whichever ones she has. Whoever this LeBlanc-like character is, who is probably LeBlanc but we're not sure yet, so I don't want to say she's LeBlanc and be wrong. That person cycles through a bunch of different characters, including the girl Ambessa killed, Mel's brother Kino, Allura, Jace, Ambessa herself, and finally Mel. This does mean that this trick is linked to Mel's mind somehow, because we're only seeing characters that are linked to Mel's consciousness. We're not seeing random characters that she hasn't met like Echo pop up. Very importantly, the character who is terrorizing Mel calls her sister. We'll see what that means pretty soon. We can't even assume that it's a family relation, but if it is, whoa! Mel's eyes glow bright orange, then she releases a golden ability to fight off the chains. This means that our assumptions on her are somewhat correct. She has an ability or an item that is saving her life. If we pause the frames and look very carefully, we can see that she does break free of those chains which were holding her. Jinx finds what seems to be Soko's old jacket from when he worked in the mines. The number below the badge doesn't seem unintentional. All of those numbers can be flipped over to spell a word on a calculator, and the words we get when we do that is he'll save. Now, I do not know what this means, but I do have a feeling that there's something more to this. Maybe it's an inside joke or a reference to one of the actors, but yeah, I can't get this one by myself. What this letter that Vander leaves for Soko means is that when Vi and Powder's mother passes away, Vander pinned her death on Soko. Then Vander decided to betray Soko and walk away from their vision to create the nation of Zaun. Vander probably did all of this to protect Vi and Powder. Vander gives their mother what I presume is orange juice after he finds out that she's pregnant. The main thing about this is that it's a callback to this scene with Jinx. Soko's book has an emblem that looks like 3 letters which are overlaid. These 3 letters would be N, O, and Z, and I shouldn't have to tell you what it means, but I am going to. It is the nation of Zaun. Vi and Powder's parents' names are Conno and Felicia. The former we learn from Vander, the latter we learn from the subtitles. With this close-up of Jace's skin with the gem, the writers seem to be telling us that this is the reason that he is here and Echo and Heimerdinger aren't. It has to do with that gem infused in his skin. Jace sees Counselor Sallow morph into some sort of creature while interacting with him. More on this later.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
I'm sorry too.
Jinx also says this exact "I'm sorry too" line in episode 3 of this season.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry too.
We are led to believe that Jace saw something extremely horrible when he touched the Arcane, and it's probably very different from what Victor saw when he merged with the Hex core. Ambessa explains to Caitlyn that Noxus has 3 core principles: vision, might, and guile. The fact that this is a thing means that we now have 100% confirmation that Swain is already the Grand General of Noxus. After taking over Noxus, Swain instates a council of 3 called the Triforix. These 3 principles, vision, might, and guile, are the principles that get the leaders chosen. Swain is vision, Darius is might, and Guile is unknown, a faceless figure, but is highly associated with LeBlanc. And with LeBlanc being tied to the Black Rose, that's probably why Ambessa speaks very poorly of this principle. Rictus chants something while the runes are on hot coals. This is probably where they get their power from, heat and the ritual, which is why we can see them light up. Singed refers to the Undercity as Zaun. Even though, as far as I can remember, there's been nothing in the series so far that hints that the council have given Zaun their independence back.
You filthy traitor.
The reason why Vi calls Huck a traitor is because she saw him sell her out to Soko. Victor's temple is built like a hex gate. Maybe this means that he was part of the original design for the hex gates? Probably, right? Vander loses it when he hears a hot iron hit the water. This is most likely trauma because he was an experiment of Singed, and Singed said that he had to survive a lot of hard stuff to make it, so go figure. As Victor touches Vander, you can see Vander's eyes light up with a purple glow, symbolizing that shimmer is a core part of his biology now. These plants that are prosperous are the same species as the ones from the lab which kept dying because of the hex core.
The final, glorious evolution.
Glorious evolution. Yes, Victor finally says glorious evolution, and if you don't know what that is, it's Victor's philosophy behind his entire character. but it's also the name of his passive ability in League of Legends. Caitlyn uses her combat training and the exact sequence of moves that she learned from Ambessa to take down Vi. Caitlyn is now Cupcake again. Ambessa is slicing up red meat. Now, most of the local cuisine, as Ambessa puts it, is seafood, at least in Piltover and Zaun. So her eating red meat does stand out quite a lot, and it does probably indicate her wealth. It's a status symbol. The net that Vi uses to restrain Ambessa is from Caitlyn's rifle. It's an ability of hers from League of Legends. Jace's inner voice is saying, "I won't fail," so we can presume that this is a conversation that he's had with someone or something during his time spent in the irregularity. Jace's visions of Victor's disciples somewhat look like creatures from the void. Rictus's Kanic Rukan, i.e. the runes on his staff, seem to be magic absorbers or magic dampeners, which is what it does in the game anyway. It gives you magic resist. I believe that Ambessa needs him around to be able to fight mages, or tricksters as she calls them. And finally, we can get back to that moment which I said would be funny earlier on in the video when I mentioned that Rictus threw Isha. Here's Karma coming back full circle. We can see Jace fire up the gemstone that is now part of his skin before charging up his hammer. He said hextech should be destroyed, so I assume him charging up this gem is part of what makes it okay for him to be a hypocrite, but we'll learn more in the coming episodes. Jace kills Victor. Well, we know Victor can't die because he's a League of Legends character, but he kills Victor because of some mission that he has which he can't fail. So before we get upset with Jace, we have to give him a chance to explain his actions. We will assume for now that he saw the future and that these creatures that he keeps seeing everywhere were caused due to hextech. This scene with Victor holding the gear has been playing the whole episode, but we now finally have context for it. The gear itself is probably hinting at Singed building a new mechanized body for Victor in the future. These screams that Victor's cult lets out after, Jace offs him, sound like creatures from the Void. Now, the Void in League of Legends has these kinds of characters that just emerge from there, and they just use magic to destroy everything and consume worlds. Considering that more and more people were going to Victor for healing, we can back Jace's decision, at least on the fact that if these people transform into void out monsters, the more people who are voided out, the bigger the threat. So Jace might have stopped a worldwide threat and have just kept it to that weird cult there in Victorland. I mean, imagine this event playing out with 1 million people instead of like 200. Crazy. And finally, the final detail we are looking into is that Isha is making the same mistake that Jinx did by using hextech to try and help an adoptive parent. Yes, this is a parallel again that they are drawing between the characters. The part about this that makes me even more sad is that we're going to have to wait until next week to find out what happens, and that has me vexed. And that's it, 101 details that you may have missed in Act 2 of Arcane Season 2. This is Lois signing off. Peace.